Hello, my yarny friends. I'm Sara Sach, and welcome back to my crochet channel. Now, today's video is this very special video. I've been working on this for quite some time, and what we're going to make today is this beautiful pocket shawl. Now, it's a long rectangle, and then we're going to have two pockets on our shawl. It's just gorgeous. The yarn is amazing, and I'll talk more about the yarn in just a second. But this is going to work up quickly, and it's comfortable. It drapes beautifully, and you are going to love it. Now, I called it the Color Block Pocket Shawl because I did it in blocks of colors. It's got this light pink, rose pink, bright pink, and then this light blue teal, and then this beautiful dark blue yarn. And it's all just a basic one row repeat. And even when we do the pockets, it's done similar, except for the top of it. We add this extra little trim on it to make the top of the pocket substantial. When you put your hand inside, you don't want it to droop around. All right, and it's going to have two pockets. I don't have a pocket on this side yet because I'm going to show you how to make that pocket and then attach both the pockets. It's super easy. You're going to love it. I just know. All right, so it measures about 16 inches across. So it's really wide. And then it's 60 inches long. So it's really long. And it's perfect for anybody. It's just gorgeous. It's easy to wear, fun to wear, beautiful, easy to make. Although I did put it in intermediate just because of some of the stitches that we're using are not really considered easy stitches. Although I think it's super easy. And those of you who have followed me for a while, you know I don't like to do really intricate patterns all that often. I do them sometimes, but I like to keep it between easy and intermediate because I want it to be my patterns for everybody that they can learn with them. All right. Although sometimes I do some of the more complicated patterns. All right, let's go and talk about what we need to make this. Oh, and don't forget, I'm going to put the complete pattern with pictures on my blog so you can see it written out. And I'll put that link down in the notes underneath this video, just like always. I designed this pocket shawl using this yarn. It's called Stitch Please. It is a light 3, or what we call a DK weight yarn. Super wash, extra fine merino wool. Now, I can't use a lot of wool yarns, but when it's a super wash merino, I don't have any problem with it. And this yarn is so soft and yet sturdy. A lot of times a really soft yarn isn't sturdy. This is still really sturdy and soft. And the drape on it, the way that it lays, is just gorgeous. All right, now this yarn was sent to me from Premier Yarn. If you would like to order this exact yarn, or even in some different colors, because I think there are, I want to say 30 different colors, but I can't remember. You'll have to check that and see how many colors they have. These are the colors that they sent me, and so I incorporated all of them into my pocket shawl. Now, I'll put my link underneath this video that will take you from that link right over to Premier Yarn website, and just click that tab that says new yarn and you can see all the new yarns. This is a new yarn. The Stitch Please also comes, I believe, in a medium weight number 4, but we're using the light number 3 for this project. And you're going to need 2 of each of the colors, okay? This first color is called Ballet Pink. This color is called English Rose, and this color is called Peony. All right, and then the Ice Blue, Caribbean, those are out of order. This is Caribbean, and this is the Deep Seas. It has a little bit of a teal, a dark teal in it. You're going to need roughly 3.5 ounces of each of the 6 colors. These only have 1.75 ounces on each of the balls, which is 126 yards. Again, I used these for this. You can go to their website and pick different colors if you want to, or you can use some light number 3 yarns that you already have. All right. So basically you need 3.5 ounces of 6 different colors of a light yarn, a light number 3 or DK weight yarn. I have to tell you though, you've got to try this yarn. It is absolutely wonderful to work with. It's smooth and soft. It feels wonderful when you put it on. When you wrap this around you, it feels wonderful. It's warm but not heavy, I guess is what I'm trying to say. All right. And again, they have lots of fun colors. Now we're going to be stitching today with our H hook, which usually with a light number 3, you don't use an H hook, but I wanted it to be just a little bit lacy. And you can see some of the openings on there because I wanted it to look more elegant than just warm. And also I think it just lays really pretty, just stitching it just a little bit looser. All right, and so we're using our H hook, 5.0 millimeter crochet hook. You're going to need your scissors and you're going to need a needle. You'll need the needle for weaving in ends and for sewing on the 2 pockets. All right, so we're going to make a rectangle pocket shawl. Now I did my pattern in color blocks. We're going to start with the lightest pink and then goes to the rose, then the dark, then we'll start with the lightest blue and go dark. So we'll start here and work our way this way in each of our blocks in our shawl. One other thing that you might want to grab is some stitch markers because we're going to be making foundation double crochets for the bottom and then we're going to work our way up the length of our shawl. All right. And sometimes I just like to use stitch markers to help mark my stitches. So we're going to begin with our slip knot. We're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yarn over, go in that 4th chain, 1, 2, 3, 4. And start stitching our foundation double crochets. Yarn over, go in that stitch that we made, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first one, yarn over, and just finish that double crochet. Now we're going to need 57 stitches. And be sure and count this chain 3 here as your first stitch. All right, so let's make a row of 57 foundation double crochets. And I like to mark mine about every 10 stitches. All right, so we're going to make 57 foundation double crochet stitches. And remember, count this chain 3 as your first stitch. So I have stitched 57 foundation double crochets. And I'm going to go ahead and just take out my stitch markers. I always like to do that. It just helps with counting, I think. It's just a preference. You don't have to do it that way if you don't want to. So once we get our 57, and make sure you counted that first chain 3 as your first stitch, or you'll have one too many stitches. All right, so then we chain 3 and turn. All right, now this next row is where we're going to start laying the foundation for our stitch pattern. All right, so we're going to double crochet in the next stitch. So our chain 3 counts as our first, so we'll double crochet in this next stitch. So we have 2 double crochets. We're going to skip 2 stitches and we're going to stitch, whoops, there we go. We're going to stitch a shell stitch in the next stitch. And our shell stitch for this pattern is 2 double crochets. 1, 2, chain 1, and 2 double crochets in the same stitch. 1 and 2. And that's our shell stitch for this whole stitch pattern. Well, when I say do a shell stitch, this is what we'll do. 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 double crochets. All right. Now we're going to skip 2, And in the next stitch, we're going to stitch a V-stitch. And the V-stitch for this pattern is a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. All right, so 2 double crochets, skip 2, shell stitch, skip 2, V-stitch. All right, so now we're going to repeat the shells and V's working across. So we'll skip the next 2 stitches and stitch our shell stitch in the next. 1 and 2, chain 1, and 1 and 2 double crochets. We'll skip the next 2 stitches and stitch a V-stitch in the next. See how that looks? And so this is our repeat going across. Get some more yarn out here. We're going to skip 2, shell stitch in the next, skip 2, V-stitch in the next. So we're alternating our shell stitches and our V-stitches with 2 double crochets skipped in between each one. And we're going to do this working all the way across until we reach those last 2 double crochet stitches. I have repeated that alternating shells and V-stitches with skipping 2 in between. You're going to have 2 double crochets on the end. You're going to have 9 shell stitches and 8 V-stitches. All right, so we ended with the shell stitch and we have 4 stitches left. So we're going to skip those next 2 and stitch 1 double crochet in the last 2. And chain 3. All right, so 2 double crochets at the beginning and end, 9 shell stitches, and 8 V-stitches. And don't worry if it seems to want to curl just a little bit. Once we get going, it'll straighten all out. But isn't that just gorgeous? All right, so we double crocheted in those last 2 stitches and chained 3. So we're going to turn our work, our chain 3 on this row, and every row on the side of our wrap, the chain 3 counts as our first double crochet. So we're going to double crochet in the next stitch. Now we're going to come over here to the chain 1 space of our shell stitch, and we're going to stitch a shell stitch in that chain 1 space, which again is 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 double crochets. And so we stitched a shell stitch in the chain 1 space of our shell stitch. Now we're going to go to the chain 1 space of our V-stitch and stitch a V-stitch. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the chain 1 space. Isn't that pretty? I just love it. It's simple and yet it's a little bit complicated, just enough to make it elegant. All right, let's go to the next chain 1 space, and that's a shell stitch. So we're going to stitch a shell stitch in the chain 1 space of our shell stitch. Whoops, there we go. Now we'll go to the chain 1 space of our V-stitch and stitch a V-stitch. Whoops, it keeps popping out of my yarn bowl. All right, and so this is our repeat across. We're going to stitch a shell stitch in the chain 1 space of the shell stitches, and then we're going to stitch a V-stitch in the chain 1 space of our V-stitches, all the way across. I repeated across, shell stitch in the chain 1 space of our shell stitches, V-stitch in the chain 1 space of our V-stitches, repeating, alternating all the way across, and then we'll stitch 1 double crochet in these last 2 stitches, and chain 3. And so for row 3, we have 9 shell stitches, 8 V-stitches. We have our 2 double crochets at the beginning and at the end of our row, and then chain 3. All right, let's do row 4. We're going to double crochet in that next double crochet because our chain 3 counts as our first double crochet. And then we're just going to repeat what we did on row 3. We're going to stitch a shell stitch in the chain 1 space of our shell stitch. And then a V-stitch in the chain 1 space of our V-stitches. Alternating, working all the way across, shell stitch, V-stitch, shell stitch, V-stitch, all the way across. Just like we did on row 3. You can already see how beautiful this yarn works up with this pattern. All right, we'll just continue to repeat that across till we reach those last 2 double crochets. I have now completed the 4th row. We have 2 double crochets at the beginning and end. We have 9 shell stitches stitched in the chain 1 space of our shell stitches. We have 8 V-stitches stitched in the chain 1 spaces of our V-stitches. And this is the 1 row repeat that you will do for the entire rectangle portion of our wrap shawl. All right. Now, you don't need to see me do 96 rows of this same thing, but I do want you to understand how the color changes work. All right. So I'm going to grab the actual shawl. This is just my swatch that I'm working off. I'm going to grab the actual shawl and explain to you how to do that. And then I'm going to show you how to bring in your new color and weave that in. So the way this pattern works is we start with color 1, which is the lightest pink color. We did that row of foundation double crochets, and then we did 16 rows of the shell stitches and V-stitches in the light color. All right, then you'll switch to your next color, and I'm going to show you how to bring that in and weave that in when I get finished talking to you about the colors, okay? So then you're going to bring in your next color, and you'll do 16 rows of the next color. Then you'll bring in your next color and do 16 rows, and you'll continue this with all 6 colors of your shawl until you reach that last color, and you'll do those 16 rows. And then I'm going to show you how to put a trim on so that it looks similar to the one we started with, so that it has that nice straight row of double crochets. All right, so just to recap, each color, all 6 colors, you're going to have 16 rows of each color. The 3 pink rows, or the 3 pink colors and the 3 blue colors. Now, this is the way that I designed it. If you want to use 3 colors or 1 color, you certainly can, because this is just a basic 1 row repeat. So, just to recap, we have our row of foundation double crochets and then 16 rows of each of our 6 colors. And then when we reach the end, I'm going to show you how to add this trim on. But before I do that, I want to show you how to bring in your next colors and weave that in, because we're not putting a trim on the sides. It's really important that you weave those ends in so they stay put and not pop out. So we're going to do that next and then add this trim. So once you've made your 16 rows and you're ready to change colors, you're going to cut off color 1 and leave yourself several inches to weave in with, because we need to weave in quite a ways in order to get it to stay put. All right, and you're not going to chain 3 on that last row. And when you bring in your new color, you're going to chain 3. Because if you would have chained 3 with your previous color, you'd have 1 stitch on that first row that was not the right color, because we want this to be the color of the next row because it counts as our first double crochet. All right, I'm going to turn this and go ahead and stitch a couple of stitches here because I want you to see how to weave this in. I'll go ahead and do this chain stitch, this shell stitch, even though it's not, this is my swatch. It's not the actual shawl. I'm just going to go ahead and stitch a little bit here, just real quick, because this is really important, stitching in the sides. I'm just going to go ahead and pull that loop big. All right, now what I do when I'm changing colors is I'll do that, what I call a stay knot. I'll take the 2 ends and just sort of loop them together. And I do that when I'm working because I don't come back and weave those in until the end of the project, okay? So once I've stitched the whole shawl, all 96 rows, then I'll come back in and weave these in. All right, so I'm just going to turn this over. All right, now we have pretty good sized ends. All right, so what you're going to do is you want to make sure that when you weave this rose one in, you stay in the rose. And when you weave this light pink one in, you stay in there. You don't want like a little dot of the wrong color showing through. All right, I probably should have left a little bit longer tail than this one because when I'm doing it on the end like this, I like to make sure I have enough to weave that in. All right, so what I usually do is I'll go up that chain 3 going through parts of the stitch and fibers, okay? And that just gets me up in the right color. And then I'm going to go through some of these fibers of the stitches and I'll come over this way. Then I'll turn and come back the way I came. That one was a little short. I'm going to show you again with this other one. I should have left that longer because you want to work this in so that it's in and not on the edge, okay? All right, so let me grab that light pink one and show you again since this one is a little bit longer. Leave yourself a little bit longer tail of yarn because it does help, okay? Now that one, because it was a join in, I went up the chain 3. All right, this one is where we ended, so I'm going to just come in, making sure I stay in the same color. And I usually put my thumb on that so I don't pull it too tight. And I'm going to go through some stitches, through some fibers. And you can see I'm going back and forth through stitches and fibers. And then when I end, I try to go inside the stitch, like at the bottom of that shell stitch, before I cut off any of the yarn. All right, because we're not putting a trim on it. The 2 double crochets on the end are our trim, and that's going to give you a nice neat look on the front and the back by weaving that in and then finishing inside the bottom of a stitch. This one, normally I will come down and do the same thing in the bottom of this shell stitch. Okay, and that's going to give you a nice finish on all of your color changes. So I've finished my entire shawl. I've got all 6 of my colors done. All right, and so this is my last row in the blue. And so we've chained 3 and we're going to turn our work. And I'm going to try to keep this from falling off my work table here because it wants to because of the weight of the shawl. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to double crochet in that next double crochet like we've been doing. And that brings us to our first shell stitch. We're going to double crochet only in the double crochet stitches. We're not going to double crochet in the chain 1 space. So 1 double crochet in those 4 double crochet stitches of our shell stitch. No double crochet in the chain 1 space. All right, now that brings us to the V-stitch, and we're going to double crochet in each of the double crochets of the V-stitch, but not the chain 1 space. All right, and so really basically what we're doing is we're just double crocheting in only the double crochets working across. All right, so we'll double crochet in the 4 double crochets of our shell stitch. Oh no, I got a tangle. Okay, and then 1 double crochet in those 2 double crochets of our V-stitch. And we'll just do this working all the way across our row. And this will give us a nice row of double crochets to match the foundation row of double crochets we did at the beginning. All right. Well, I'm having trouble with tangles today. Alrighty, so I'm just going to work across, stitching double crochets in just the double crochet stitches across. So I stitched a double crochet in each of the double crochets across, and I'm going to cut my yarn and weave this end in. I also need to weave the end in at the beginning where I started. All right, so I have a couple of ends to weave in. The shawl portion is complete. Now we're going to make some pockets. So this is one of the pockets, and of course we need to make 2. It measures 7 inches across by 9 inches long. So it's a nice size. You can slip your hand right inside to help keep a little bit warmer than just wearing the shawl. Okay, and I only did these in 2 colors. This one I did in this bright pink and the soft pink. And then I'm going to make another one using the teal and the light pink. And I'll do them on opposite colors. On the end with all the blues is where I'll put the pink pocket. And the end with all the pinks, I'll put the blue pocket. All right, let's get started. Make another pocket and we'll get these sewn on. So we're going to start again with those foundation double crochets. So we'll start with our slip knot, chain 4 again, start it just like we did with the bottom edge of our shawl, only this time we're only going to make 27 foundation double crochets. And again, our chain 3 there at the beginning is going to count as our first foundation double crochet. So, with whatever color you're choosing for your pocket, we're going to need to stitch 27 foundation double crochets. I have stitched those 27 foundation double crochets, and remember the chain 3 here counts as our first one. Chain 3 and turn. Our chain 3 counts as our first double crochet, so we double crochet in the next stitch. We're going to skip the next 2 and stitch that shell stitch just like we did on the shawl. 2 double crochets, chain 1 and 2 double crochets. And then again we're going to skip 2 and stitch a V-stitch. So we're stitching the same stitch pattern, we're just not stitching as many. We're making just enough to make a pocket. So skip 2 and shell stitch in the next. Skip 2 and V-stitch in the next. All right, V-stitch. I should have pulled that out better. All right, skip 2 in our last shell stitch. 1 and 2, chain 1 and 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. All right, so we only have 1, 2, 3, 4 shell stitches and 1, 2, 3 V stitches on our pocket. Then we have our last 4 stitches, and we're just going to double crochet in those last 2. 1 and 2. Get in there. There we go. And chain 3. All right. So 2 double crochets, 2 double crochets at the beginning and end, 1, 2, 3, 4 shell stitches, and 1, 2, 3 V stitches for row 2 of our pocket. All right, let's do row 3. We have our chain 3. We're going to turn our work. Again, it counts as our first double crochet, and then we'll double crochet in the next. Shell stitch in the chain 1 space of the shell stitch. V stitch in the chain 1 space of the V stitch. And repeat across. Shell stitch in the chain 1 space of the shell stitch. And V stitch in the chain 1 space of the V stitch. Whoops, there we go. All right, our last shell stitch for row 3. Oops. There we go. And then our last 2 double crochets. And chain 3. So now we've completed the 3rd row. We have 2 double crochets at the beginning and end, 1, 2, 3, 4 shells, and 3 V stitches. So now what we're going to do is we're going to continue to repeat row 3 for 10 more rows. All right? So repeat row 3 for 10 more rows. I have completed those 10 additional rows, so that brings us to row 13. We're going to cut our yarn and bring in our next color. Whoops, I want to make sure I leave myself a long tail there. There we go. Chain 3. I'm going to do that little stay knot, and I do this every time I change colors just to keep it from coming undone while I'm working. All right, so we're going to turn, and we're going to do the same thing that we did on the end of our shawl, is we're going to stitch only a double crochet in each of the double crochets, but not any of the chain 1 spaces. So our chain 3 counts as our first. We're going to double crochet in that next stitch. We're going to double crochet in each of the double crochets of the shell stitch. And then we'll double crochet only in the 2 double crochets of the V stitches. Just like we did on the end of this shawl, we did not double crochet in the chain 1 spaces. All right? And this again is going to give us a nice solid row of double crochet across the top of our pocket, like it did across the edge of our shawl. 1 double crochet in each of the double crochet stitches will get you 26 double crochets. All right, chain 3 and turn. Now we're going to double crochet in the next stitch. And now we're going to do a front post double crochet in the next 2 stitches. So instead of making our double crochet up top, we're going to go around the post of the stitch. And we'll do that in these next 2. Then the next 2, we'll just stitch 2 regular double crochets. 1 and 2. All right, then the next 2, we'll do a front post double crochet. And so what we're going to do is alternate across stitching 2 front posts and 2 regular, alternating all the way across. 2 regular, 2 front post double crochets. Two regular, 2 front post double crochets. And we'll repeat this, working all the way across this row. We repeated it across, stitching 2 front posts, 2 regular, all the way across, ending on 2 regulars, and chain 3 and turn our work. Now we're going to be stitching back post stitches, and we're going to stitch those back post stitches in those front post stitches from the previous row. All right, so we're going to double crochet in the next stitch, and then we're going to stitch a back post in those 2 front post stitches. Then we'll stitch a regular double crochet in the next 2 stitches, and then a back post in the next 2. All right, let me show you how that looks from the front. This is the back, of course, and that's why those are considered back post stitches. But when you turn it over, they're stitched in those front posts, which gives you a really nice texture stitch for the top of your pocket. All right, so we're going to continue to alternate. 1 double crochet in the next 2, 1 back post double crochet in the next 2, and then we'll work this all the way across the top of our pocket. I have completed that row. On the back side, it looks like this. And then on the front side, this is where we place those back posts in the front post stitches. And it just makes a really nice texture, and it also sort of pulls it in a little bit for the pocket. At the end of that row, we're only going to chain 1 and turn. The chain 1 does not count as a stitch, and all we're going to do on this last row of the pocket is place a single crochet in each of those stitches, working all the way across. I finished that row of single crochet across. I tied my yarn off. I just left it attached. The reason is we're going to use a little bit of this here to sew it on. We're going to change to the next color and sew it on here, and then we'll bring back in that light color. If we sewed it all in this color, we'd have spots of the color we didn't want to show through. Like the light blue would show through on here, and the light pink would show through on here. Now you're going to need 2 pockets, and you can see I made them different. It's up to you how you want to make your pockets. You can use the darker colors, you can use whatever colors you want, and you can even make it all one color if you want to. I just wanted to bring in more of those different colors so that they corresponded with the colors. Okay? All right, let's sew these pockets on our pocket shawl. Now the pocket placement, where I liked it best, was 4 inches up from the bottom, centered in the center of the shawl. That way the pocket, it's low enough where your hands can fit in it nicely, but it also goes across 2 colors here so you get nice contrast, okay? I did use some long pins and pinned it here and here, and then I used my needle to tack it down here because we're going to sew just the top portion with this pink. And I like to make sure that these corners get some good stitches because that's where a lot of the pressure comes, is on these two corners. All right, and then I just sew some stitches in here, making sure I'm going through everything. I'm not doing whip stitches. I'm doing what I call back and forth stitches, where I go back and come up. All right, and I'm going to take this to the back of my shawl, and I'll work that in later, because what I want to do now is switch to the darker pink and sew that on with that, because I don't want the light pink to show through. All right, so I'm going to cut off a piece of this darker pink. I'm going to come up from the bottom right here where the darker pink starts. Make sure I leave some back here for, you know, weaving in, and I'm just going to go down, across, and up to here, and then I'll finish off with the light pink, okay? So what I do is I'm following this row of that first double crochet down the side, okay? And I'm making stitches by going up, and then I come back and go up again. I'm sure it has a name. I just like using it because I think it gives me a really good hold on my pocket. And I also like stitching on my flat surface because I know I can see exactly where my stitches are going. I can see the whole pocket and the placement of the pocket. You don't really have to put the straight pins in. I just like doing that because then I know they're going to stay put. But now you can see why it was important to change colors here, because if I would have stitched with this light pink across here, you'd have some jagged stitches and it wouldn't look real pretty. And we want our pocket to look pretty on here. All right, so I'm down to the corner. I'm going to go back and make that loop stitch I like to do. All right, I want to make sure my corner is kind of a nice square there. So I'm going to go in. There we go. All right, and kind of push that where it belongs. I'm going to turn it a little, probably just to make it a little bit easier to stitch on, although my shawl is quite long and wants to take off the table. All right, now I'm going to turn it this way just to make it easier. And I'm going to continue those stitches where I go forward and back across the bottom. And this, of course, is a little easier because you've got those stitches to stitch in where we have that beginning row. All right, so I'm going to continue to stitch up and up here, and then I'll change colors to the light pink and stitch my pocket on. Then I need to grab the other pocket and put it on the other side. So now I have both of my pockets sewn on. And they're nice and sturdy and beautiful. And I love the contrast of the pink on the blue and the blue on the pink. Now, you will notice that you do have some stitches showing on the inside. But that's on the inside, so that's not really going to matter that much. You can tidy it up as much as you want to. You know, just do your best. When you're sewing on your pockets. You know, you might even consider doing blue on the blue, pink on the pink, whatever you want to do, you know, to make them more tidy in your opinion. I love this shawl. I think it turned out absolutely gorgeous. And I have someone in mind that I'm going to give it to. And if she lets me, I'm going to take a picture of her in it, okay? And I'll show it to you on a later video. So this is our Color Block Pocket Shawl. I just love how it turned out. It's absolutely gorgeous.